gentlemen. My name is Nick Agopian, and I'm the president of Revive Air, a company that manufactures a electronic disinfection device using plasma technologies. What we're trying to do here is essentially offer safeguarding for indoor health using positive effective measures on pathogen disinfection. When we look at how we live our lives indoors, and because the indoor environment is becoming tighter and tighter and tighter for energy conservation, we realize that there are potentially impurities in the air that can offer us discomfort or impact our overall health. DALI is Disability Adjusted Life Year, which measures how we expose ourselves to indoor air. And specifically for this presentation, it comes to microbials and submicron particles, where as we live our lives, we have healthy lives and an incident, healthy life in an instance, we live with disability and die early. And that's predominantly because of what we breathe in through our noses. Again, it could be microbials, it could be submicron particles, it can even be gaseous contaminants. When we look at what we're breathing, size does matter. Originally, if we go back 20 years ago, we said, okay, whatever is big, we got to filter out, not realizing that it's the small stuff that really does impact our lives. Here we have a PM10, which is our typical MERV8 filter. We have a red blood cell, which is obviously half the size or a third of the size. PM 2.5, which is now being studied heavily, bacteria, and you can see a virus is the smallest one. And when we try to understand how small these things are, here's fine beach sand, a strand of hair. The blue dot is this big black PM10. The red dot on the blue dot is this PM 2.5. And why is it important? It's because the Institute of Medicine has now deemed it a promoter of heart attacks and strokes, and obviously cardiovascular and respiratory diseases. Because what's occurring is as we breathe these things in, the barrier between the air side and the blood side is very thin and measures anywhere between 2 to 3 up to 5 micrometers. One skin cell thick is 30 micrometers. So as we breathe these particles in and these contaminants or contagious pathogens, they will end up in our bloodstream just because of the way our lungs are designed. So when we look at contamination within spaces, now it could be something as severe as SARS, or it could be something like influenza or people with asthma that have that are hypersensitive. But when you have a single person that's contaminated and you have a central HVAC system, everybody within that house, office building, airport, restaurant, hospital will all get contaminated without a positive pathogen disinfection strategy. If you do have something that can control pathogens, regardless if one person is contaminated, you can protect other people within spaces. Now, back last year, the government and the White House had mandated ASHRAE to come up with a new standard and gave us 6 months. The standard that was developed was control of infectious aerosols within the built environment. And there were 2 options. And this is something everyone has heard frequently. Open your window, open your doors, ventilate as much as you can. And yes, ventilation is a mitigation strategy for controlling pathogens indoors. However, when you're living in Minnesota and it's the middle of January, it's virtually impossible to just keep windows and doors open. Conversely, if you're living in Miami in the middle of July, you can't do that as well because of the humidity and the discomfort. But while ventilation is an option, the more affordable way of controlling pathogens indoors is to use something called equivalent outdoor air using filtration. This filtration can be anything. It could be HEPA filters, or of course, it could be an electronic device. It could be ionization, and at the same token, it could be UV lights, photocatalytic oxidation, or any kind of active type of filtration. For this particular purpose, we are going to be talking about a non-thermal plasmic disinfection device. When we look at the 4 stages of matter, everybody's familiar with 3 of them. If we take H2O, when it's very cold with low energy, you have ice. You add a little bit of heat, you get water, liquid water. You add a little bit more heat, you get vapor, which is the stuff that comes off of your tea kettle, that humidity that's coming off. When you add a little bit more energy, that's when you get plasma. And what we do with our technology is we have a center pin, which is positively charged, and an outside ring, which is negatively charged. And what we're doing is taking 120 volt or 220 volt and creating a differential through these open areas of 5,500 volts with very, very low amperage. A 24-inch by 24-inch filter would consume only 12 watts, the equivalent of like a light bulb. Unlike other technologies that emit stuff into the air to try to kill a pathogen like bacteria or inactivate a virus, we do something that's a little bit different. In this plasma field, as you see here, what we're trying to do is rupture the fatty tissue that encapsulates the genetic material. In the case of a bacteria where it's living, it's got DNA. In the case of a virus that's not living, it's got RNA. By rupturing this protein here and exposing the genetic material, we allow Mother Nature to take over and with oxygen, oxidize the genetic material. So unlike other types of technologies, all we're doing is rupturing that fatty tissue and then allowing Mother Nature to take over, which is why we're able to get extremely high kill rates or inactivity rates. Now, regardless on what the pathogen may be, it could be, of course, something that's dangerous, like SARS-CoV-2 that can kill you in 2 weeks, or it could be something like influenza and you can get the common cold or anything along those lines. We are able to control because at the end of the day, all pathogens have a similar structure. And what we're trying to do is just, again, rupture the fatty tissue and expose the genetic material. The filters themselves, they come in 5 different standard sizes. However, they're not limited to these 5 standard sizes. They could be designed in any dimension. In fact, we're working on a project right now on a penthouse in New York City where they'd like to place these filters on the return air grill. And the return air grills are linear slots of 8-inch by 45 inches long. So any dimension is available to any size system, whether it's a 3-ton furnace for a home or a 600-ton medical application. When we look at the efficacy of this technology, here we see a report from Innovative Bioanalysis using the SARS-CoV-2 pathogen. And this test was done using the latest protocols in place, which is not single pass efficiency, but chamber testing over 60 minutes. And you could see here that we're able to achieve a 99.969 effectiveness against SARS-CoV-2. And then when it comes to SARS-CoV-2 Omicron, we're able to achieve a 99.97% after 60 minutes within the space. So very, very high efficacy potential using this technology. And regardless on whether it was tested in Europe or in Asia against H1N1, we're still seeing the very, very high 99.99%. This is a home where we're able to control microbials. In this particular home in South Florida, which is very humid, they had 4 lizards, 3 dogs, 3 cats, 2 parakeets, and I believe a snake. And you could see that the microbials were extremely high pre-installation of the Reviver air shield. Post-installation, we've seen some incredible reduction, and the home went from being very malodorous to not smelling anything at all. Now, when we look at the latest standards from ASHRAE, and specifically standard 241, they're requesting MS2 testing. And this testing has been conducted. And what's very important is not only do we get the efficacies that we needed, but we're able to achieve this where there was no ozone increase. In concert, what we're able to do is also enhance MERV-8 filters to perform like a MERV-13. And in this particular depiction, the green line after 120 minutes is what a MERV-13 filter would do inside a chamber. This orange yellowish line in the bottom is your MERV-8 filter. Our technology alone, which is the blue one, is able to achieve somewhere in the middle. But when you combine, in the gray line, combine our technology with the MERV-8 filter, the agglomeration that occurs between something that's negatively charged and something that's positively charged allows submicron particles to get larger to the point where a MERV 8 filter can remove the submicron particles that a MERV 13 can do. And as you can see here, we can achieve almost the same level as MERV 13, but with only a MERV 8, without the cost of the MERV 13, and without the penalty of having to push the air through a MERV 13 filter and its high static pressure capabilities. The products have been tested against ETL and UL, including independent ozone testing, and once again, all by US laboratories. Skip through this one. Now, when we look at this type of technology compared to filtration, we don't require any consumables other than cleaning the filter once every 6 months to 9 months by simply using a tool that goes inside each one of the circular openings and just cleans any deposition of carbonized material that may occur. And because there's no consumables, there's no waste, and there's no need of landfill. But something that's very critical is a pathogen that's DNA-based can be killed. A pathogen that's RNA-based that may be sitting on filters can't be killed, which means when you go service a filter that has viruses trapped in it, you can infect the service technicians that are handling these type of filters. So using a technology that's active, such as these or other types of UV, would be the best practice in assuring that not only do you protect the people within the built environment, but you're able to protect the people that are servicing these filters. I'm going to skip through all these because this is going to get too technical for what you need. What I do want to say is, now when we compare the electrical consumption of our technology compared to electrical consumption of a MERV 6, a MERV 12, or a MERV 16, you can see that in a MERV 12, after 10 years, you would use up to $35,000 in electrical costs. With Reviver, it's $2,850. So what's interesting about this is, yes, you're going to save that money, but unlike other technologies where you do have a consumable where you have to replace the particulate filters, because we consume less electrical cost, we have a payback where our systems become cost neutral after 3 years. The products can be installed in central air handlers and fan coil units or even VRV type of systems. They're designed to be able to operate for 15 years without any consumables. In addition, we have standalone units and units that can be put into split systems, those little wall units that may be hanging. So as a summary, these products are extremely thin. They're only 1 inch thick, which means any HVAC system can be retrofitted with this type of device. It's universal for residential and non-residential applications. Of course, it conforms to UL 2998 with ultra-low ozone. And again, it has lower emissions than using particulate filters and no consumables and no waste. Thank you.
You did a great job, Nick. Got a couple of quick questions for you. When you and I first met, we talked about my entry into this space, and that was discovering and mitigating radon hazards in my home.
Yes.
And I believe when we met, I asked you about radon and kind of if your technology had a solutions for that. Can you talk a little bit about that briefly?
Yes, absolutely. Radon being a very small particulate, and because of the fact that we can agglomerate those particulates, we're able to enhance steady state concentration of radon daughters within homes. Now, this is a test that was conducted by the National Civil Air Defense Engineering in China. And because they have a tremendous amount of ozone in sporadic little areas around China. So they conducted this test using this test protocol here. It's a test standard for radon in ambient air. And again, this was tested in China, and they're able to see a removal rate after 6 hours of 88.5%. What we're trying to do is get this tested here in the United States at LMS laboratories, and as soon as they can put together enough soil or ground rocks and granite to be able to generate enough radon, we're going to be able to give you something that's more US based test protocols rather than something that was tested over in Shanghai.
So then would this be like a supplement to a mitigation system or kind of a replacement to a mitigation system?
This would be a replacement to a mitigation system because while you can have you see, if you have a mitigation system such as an exhaust fan, and you're able to depressurize everything underneath the slab, you're still going to have some level of radon within the space that comes in, kind of like what I see here in my house. So you have a certain steady state concentration. So it can be used to complement an existing system and bring it down to even lower levels, because as far as I'm concerned, radon is absolutely a #1 killer and a promoter of lung cancer, obviously. But what we're seeing used in Europe and in Asia is this would replace some of the existing systems. So if you don't have a system, then this is something that can be put in place of that. But of course, when you have it in tandem and when you use an existing slab depressurization system, this becomes the fine tuning that a typical exhaust type fan isn't able to achieve.
I guess the national average for mitigation for residential properties in and around $1,200 to $1,500. I think we spent close to $2,000 because we had to do a different. We live in a townhome and we had to do a different type of mitigation where we actually dug under the slab and then put the suction in the gravel pit under the slab, as opposed to kind of creating a bunch of holes within the property. What would it cost someone to just get one of your units versus getting a home mitigated in regards to cost?
Sure. This would be half that price, and a lot easier to install without extremely evasive type of work, as you say, to put a whole bunch of holes or digging. With this type of technology, we can replace your existing particulate filters. If you have a 2-inch filter track in your home, and I'm not sure if you have a 2-inch or if you have a 4-inch, but let's just say you have the smaller one, the 2-inch. You can remove that 2-inch Mervate filter and slide in this in concert with a 1-inch Mervate filter, which would cost you less money, and just wire the connections to L1 and L2 of your fan motor, and that's all that has to be done in order to give you radon mitigation. So you don't have to dig, you don't have to again be evasive to any civil requirements. And my concern is that a lot of times, and I think this is what's happening in my house here, is my mitigation system goes through my basement to depressurize the slab, but it's all the way on the call it the southwest corner of the house, which means that the northeast corner, I believe, is not getting any depressurization under the slab. Because of course the depressurization takes air from everywhere around that immediate area, which is why you're never able to get down to zero, because it's not 100% full depressurization of the slab. So you still have radon that comes in, which is why I ended up installing this technology in order not only to control pathogens and submicron particles, but to give me the fine tuning to bring me close to zero when it comes to radon.
Wow, that's amazing. So no HOA approval required, in other words.
No HOA approval. Correct. Correct.
Yeah, so we monitor. We use the AirThings monitor to monitor radon levels in our home. Real time, continuous. I'm even hearing that once you get your home mitigated, you should get it retested every 2 years. But we monitor it real time, 24 hours a day. But so what would you say is the biggest barrier to adoption for your technology? Is it awareness, or what do you think it is?
The biggest adoption to date has been um, all of the standards writing and development in order to have it adopted by code. Back in January of 2023, ASHRAE received a mandate from the White House to develop a mitigation strategy on the control of infectious aerosols within the built environment. The White House gave ASHRAE 6 months to do it. They worked on it, they got it done, and it was voted into a standard in June of last year. And now, slowly, some codes are starting to adopt this, even though the White House has mandated this not to be an typical code cycle because this is a national health security risk. But codes are starting to adopt it as we move forward. The problem that occurs is some of these strategies that have been in place require a tremendous amount of HVAC retrofit. Like if you're going to put in a MERV 13 or even a HEPA filter inside a typical HVAC system, the fans have to be updated and upgraded to be able to overcome the static pressure. Otherwise, if you're going to be installing a bank of UV lights, you need the space and you need to modify your ductwork. So there's been a little bit of a concern on how do we get some of this stuff done and adopting this by code. But with our technology, because it's so seamless and it just slides into your regular type of filter track, we're not going to see that kind of a problem. But it's just in general, we have to move at the speed of the code cycle. So that's been really the biggest concern in mass adoption of this technology. But that doesn't mean that some consulting engineers are still adopting this technology for their multifamily applications, for their single family applications, or, again, even the non-residential applications.
And are you finding any schools adopting it for removal of asthma triggers, those types of things?
Absolutely. Anywhere where you're going to call it a high dense area, it could be schools, it could be waiting rooms, it could be hospitals, it could be airports, train stations, bus stations, anywhere where you've got people side by side, including an elevator when you think about it. Um, this is going to be paramount. If you want to specifically talk about schools, the amount of outdoor air that's being recommended per person is doubling inside the classroom itself. And then when you look at hallway ventilation, which technically never existed, all of the air typically goes into the classroom, and hallways aren't ventilated. But now hallways are going to have to be ventilated, and what's being bounced around as we speak within the standards communities is it's 60% above whatever you're going to be using in the classroom, which is a tremendous amount of air. And not only is it going to have to increase the size of your HVAC system, but the operating costs of those HVAC systems as well. So adoption of some kind of pathogen filtration strategy using an active approach. Again, it could be hydroxyl molecules, it could be hydrogen peroxide, it could be UV light, ionization, or in this particular case, non-thermal plasmic disinfection. We feel would be the best way to do it at the most minimal installation cost, and of course, retrofit that's required within the HVAC system.
Well, Nick,
But
this has been definitely very enlightening. I'm glad that I met you at the Build NYC Expo last month. And I said it then, I'll say it again. I think that you should have won the most innovative product award if they had such a thing there. I thought
Oh,
that what you were offering was very innovative, especially the radon piece. I thought was very enlightening. So,
yes,
uh,
I'm quite excited about that myself. Um,